This seems to be the opposite of that. It seems to be so many instances, I think, where wokeness is the opposite of what I grew up as liberalism. Liberalism was, let's give the women an equal shot. This is, let's put a male in the swimming pool with the women. I don't get it.
It's crazy. And meanwhile, trans people who genuinely want to compete at athletics and swimming or whatever it may be, they're the ones who are suffering here. They need to be found a way to compete fairly and justly.
The two, who frequently support diametrically opposed ideas, threw their support behind Katie Porter's criticism of Riley Gaines and her position on women's sports. Porter's ideas were wonderfully reflected by Morgan's trademark cutting humor, incisive wit, and precise argumentation. The conversation is frank, unrelenting, and hilarious. Get ready because things are going to get heated. He should be able to politely make his views, though. Regarding Riley Gaines, she is one of those individuals whose viewpoint I strongly disagree with.
Social justice warriors who are fond of governing by hashtag like to say silence is violence. And we know that because it rhymes. The words victim and survivor have traveled a long way from their original usage. The baby from the Nirvana album says he's a victim. He's suing Nirvana for lifelong damages. I never thought I'd have to say this to a baby, but stop being such a baby.
Katie Porter initially targeted Riley Gaines and her support of women's sports. According to Porter, athletic authorities should decide whether to allow biological males to compete in women's divisions. But Piers Morgan was not having any of it. He instantly responded with concrete statistics that demonstrated the pronounced physical advantages that men possess in terms of strength, speed, and endurance. Despite Porter's best efforts to resist, Morgan and Maher were prepared with their trademark mix of wit, humor, and accuracy. One by one, they dismantled her points. This was more than just a debate. In fact, Porter hadn't expected such a harsh lesson.
We should be able to have a civil debate. Nobody, including Riley Gaines, who I disagree with strongly, should be
What do you disagree with, out of interest?
I think that it should be up to sporting bodies to make their decisions about who and
What
how
has she
should
said
compete.
that's actually wrong?
I think that what she has done is try to turn this. We talked about people, using things to kind of get likes and get clicks.
That's not what she's doing.
It's not?
I've got no truck for Riley Gaines personally, but all I've seen her do is stand up for women's rights to fairness and equality.
Well,
She actually competed against Leah Thomas, and it was obviously unfair. Leah Thomas won one of the races in the NCAA championships by 50 seconds against a bunch of biological females who simply couldn't keep up. That cannot be right. It cannot be.
In response, Katie Porter said that Riley Gaines was not a sincere advocate for justice, but rather a self-serving athlete on a quest for fame and records. But Piers Morgan could not stand the barrage of allegations. With his characteristic clarity and conviction, he reminded Porter that Gaines was speaking for all women who were compelled to compete unfairly, not just herself. He presented her cause as one of justice and the preservation of biological reality in women's sports, rather than self-interest. With a nod of assent, Maher shifted the tone. Porter's case broke down when logic and evidence were applied.
That is something that I think our sporting bodies should be dealing with. And by the way, Riley is speaking up for herself, and that is her prerogative, and I respect her free speech.
I think she's speaking up for pretty much every female athlete in the world.
I mean, wasn't that the point of Title IX? Title IX in the early 70s was something that was it was a major event in feminism, that we finally have this law that says at colleges, right, and I think high schools too, but definitely colleges, women's sports have to be given equal to men's sports, so that women aren't and this led to the WNBA and lots of other stuff.
Then, in a forceful refutation, Bill Maher presented Porter with hard, unyielding facts. He reminded everyone that the purpose of Title IX, the historic law that transformed women's sports, was to ensure equality and fairness for female athletes. Maher wasn't holding back. For many years, Title IX gave women the ability to compete, achieve success, and make history. He argued that by permitting biological males to participate in women's categories, that progress is now being subtly reversed. Instead of promoting equality, these measures risk eliminating it. The room fell silent as Maher presented his argument, point by point. His final statement, "If fairness in women's sports is lost, Title IX means nothing," struck a profound chord. Maher's trademark mic drop was unmistakable, bold, and precise.
We finally have this law that says at colleges, right, and I think high schools too, but definitely colleges, women's sports have to be given equal to men's sports so that women aren't and this led to the WNBA and lots of other stuff. This seems to be the opposite of that. It seems to be so many instances, I think, where wokeness is the opposite of what I grew up as liberals.
Trans people who genuinely want to compete at athletics and swimming or whatever it may be, they're the ones who are suffering here. They need to be found a way to compete fairly and justly.
The most equitable and well-rounded solution, in my opinion, is to establish a distinct category for transgender athletes. It maintains fair, open, and respectful competition for all participants. No one should have to suppress their hormones or change their biology in order to compete. The goal of this approach is equality, not exclusion. While transgender athletes have an equal and discrimination-free platform, biological women can be sure that their opportunities will be protected. What makes sports meaningful is not manufactured results, but true fairness, recognizing that balance is common sense, not bias. Bill Maher and Piers Morgan once again expertly dissected Porter's ideas, with Maher exposing the shortcomings of various far-left viewpoints using his signature wit.
What's your answer then?
I think there's one or two answers. I think they either compete against their biological sex, as many of them did before, or you create an entirely new category for transgender athletes. And then they're able to compete fairly. But what you cannot do is continue to allow more and more trans athletes to start decimating women's records, in some cases, irrevocably. It's just not fair.
Dave Chappelle stands out among the woke crowd as anything but cautious. He doesn't avoid touchy subjects or apologize for uncomfortable truths. With sharp humor and fearless confidence, he tackles the most difficult topics, politics, gender, and race, head-on. Despite public criticism and attacks from cancel culture, he continues to perform, becoming more confident and incisive each time. Chappelle's comedy isn't for everyone, but that's the point. He pushes limits, challenges preconceptions, and reminds us that humor should provoke thought rather than merely entertain. In a society where people are afraid to speak the truth, Dave Chappelle remains one of the few who still does.
Here's my 8 words people need to stop redefining. Hate, victim, hero, shame, violence, survivor, phobic, and white supremacy. Hannah Gadsby characterized Dave Chappelle's controversial Netflix special as hate speech dog whistling. Well, dog whistle refers to when someone puts things in code because they're afraid to come out and say what they really think. That's what you get from Dave Chappelle? He's afraid to say what he really thinks?
Indeed, the term phobia has become so overused that it no longer has real meaning. Disliking something doesn't mean you're afraid of it, yet now it's used to silence dissent and advance agendas. I've been called commitment phobic. I simply don't want commitment, not because I'm afraid of it. That also doesn't make me single phobic. I'm not afraid of bowling, I just don't enjoy it. Everywhere, phobia is being misused as a shield against criticism. The moment someone questions a group or ideology, they're instantly labeled prejudiced or intolerant, a quick way to avoid accountability and silence opposing viewpoints. Real progress requires open discussion, not restriction. We should be free to question, debate, and disagree without being branded fearful. When language becomes a weapon, free speech weakens, and society grows more fearful than empathetic.
And it's not hate speech just because you disagree with it, nor is it phobic. Phobic comes from the Greek word for something one fears irrationally, like spiders or germs, but now is used as a suffix for anything you just don't like. I've been called commitment phobic. No, I don't fear commitment, I just don't want it.
I'm not sure how this can be considered violence, to be honest. Words and actions are now used carelessly, labeled as violence, whenever someone feels offended. Uncomfortable or inappropriate behavior rarely equates to real violence. Take this example. A naked man and 2 women enter an elevator. It isn't violent. It's shocking, inappropriate, and disrespectful, but there's no bodily harm. The real issue lies in how the definition of violence keeps expanding until it almost becomes meaningless.
I've been called commitment phobic. No, I don't fear commitment, I just don't want it. Other people do. Great. I don't call them single phobic. I don't like bowling. I'm not bowling phobic.
By labeling every unpleasant experience as trauma or violence, we minimize the suffering of actual victims. Blurring these crucial distinctions dilutes the importance of serious issues and promotes a culture that treats even mild emotional discomfort as an attack. Words have power, but disagreement and anger are not the same as violence. That's just reality in a free society.
Also in the category of we just don't like it, so we're pretending it's something else, is the word violence. Last year there was a staff mutiny at the CBS drama All Rise when some of the writers, I'm sorry, I meant victims, took issue with a scene where two women are in an elevator and a naked man gets on and they just continue talking calmly. And if you think that's offensive, you should see how the guy pushed the button.
Violence, by definition, means intentionally causing physical harm to someone. Pain from words or actions can be emotional, not physical. There's a clear difference between being hurt and being injured. Yet in recent years, this line has blurred as people mistake emotional distress for physical aggression. Though it may seem empathetic, this confusion trivializes genuine suffering. If everything is considered violent, then nothing truly violent stands out. Words are powerful, but twisting their meaning to serve personal agendas only breeds confusion. We need clarity and honesty. Emotional pain deserves compassion, while physical assault deserves punishment. Mixing the two weakens both.
But the writers on this show found the scene objectionable and sent off an email saying, two women would not calmly continue a conversation with a naked white guy running into the elevator. That is violence. No, it's not.
I must say, this is just absurd. Interpreting people's motives can be tricky. Consider filing a lifelong lawsuit against a legendary band for using your child's photo on an album cover that became iconic. The picture was taken long before the child could even remember it, yet it's now blamed for lasting trauma. Honestly, I can't identify the true basis of that case. Many saw it as a money grab rather than a fight for justice. Perhaps the lawsuit seemed like an easy payday once fame faded and bills piled up. Either way, it perfectly illustrates how entitlement and opportunism can turn something simple and meaningful into a public spectacle.
Violence is when it hurts. It usually involves leaving a mark of some kind. Of course, innumerable things can lead to violence, but I'm sorry, you can't take that word and use it for stuff that's just scary to you or just verbal, which is something I literally learned in kindergarten. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but if you don't know how that one ends, you need to repeat kindergarten.
In the end, everything connects. Whether it's the ridiculous lawsuit against a rock legend, Katie Porter's heated real-time debate, or the careless use of words like violence and phobia.
Social justice warriors who are fond of governing by hashtag like to say silence is violence. And we know that because it rhymes. The words victim and survivor have traveled a long way from their original usage. The baby from the Nirvana album says he's a victim. He's suing Nirvana for lifelong damages. I never thought I'd have to say this to a baby, but stop being such a baby.
We're losing common sense fast. Emotions now outweigh facts. Anger replaces accountability, and language bends to personal agendas. Voices like Piers Morgan, Dave Chappelle, and Bill Maher stand out not because they're flawless, but because they remind us that being offended isn't the same as being harmed.
In 2010, the New York Times used the term white supremacist on 75 occasions. Last year, over 700 times. Now, some of that, to be sure, is because Trump came along and emboldened the faction of this country that is truly white supremacist. It is, of course, still a real thing. But it shouldn't apply to something like, as more than a few have suggested, getting rid of the SAT test. Now, if we find the SAT test is slanted in such a way as to stack the deck in favor of Caucasians, if there are questions like, Biff and Chip are sailing a yacht, traveling at 12 knots to an Ed Sheeran concert on Catalina. If Catalina is 26 miles away, how many White Claws should they bring?
And truth doesn't need sugarcoating. If society keeps confusing criticism with hate and discomfort with danger, honest discussion will vanish. What we need isn't more outrage or censorship, but clarity, common sense, and a touch of old-fashioned honesty. Please remember to like, subscribe, and watch again soon. Thank you.